Well, good afternoon or good evening if you're in the USA, and thanks so much for joining us. If you are overseas, it's already at night, or super Saturday morning if you're in the Pacific Rim. So I am Bruce. A lot of people know me as the guy in the blue shirt here on LinkedIn, and I am also all about hashtag simpler, faster, better. And I'm proud and honored to have Dr. Mike Patterson with me this evening. And we actually have a lot of shared common ground between people and processes and mission critical things. So welcome, Dr. Mike. Let everyone know where you're situated, and hopefully the old techie bug won't get you too much tonight.
Hey, Bruce. Well, thanks for having me. I'm in sunny Southern California in the greater Los Angeles area. It's mid-afternoon or toward the later part of the afternoon here in Los Angeles. It's a beautiful day. We're in the mid-80s. It's going to be a fantastic weekend. So I'm really pleased to begin the weekend with you and your viewers. So thanks for having me.
Well, I got the goosebumps, man, because it's almost identical here in Tempe, Arizona. I used to be in your region until August, and I jumped ship, as it were, and I moved to Tempe, Arizona, and I'm actually loving it here. It's really kind of a fusion and a mixture, a lot of SoCal influences, but the cost of living is way, way lower. It's amazing just by driving, 500 miles or something, how much different life can be. So it's staggeringly different in a nice way. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're beginning the best part of the year in Arizona. The next 4 or 5 months are going to be beautiful there.
Yeah.
So enjoy every minute of it.
Yeah. So talk about mission, people, and processes. We have a big old thing going on with the water rights right now. Just a little bit of local news. Not that I'm trying not to follow the negative news. The negative Nellies just drive me nuts. So. But I find it really interesting because we've got the big semiconductor people that want to expand here versus the traditional farmers, and they're kind of now getting into it over water rights. So it's going to be an interesting process to see how the people and the process and the mission all comes about, as it were, because obviously the government have vested interest in keeping both industries going really well, because that's the backbone of a lot of what Arizona does, is those things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we could solve all those problems if we could just figure out how to make it rain a lot more in our part of the country. We haven't figured that out yet.
Well, actually, I find it amazing. So I was able to spend some time in the Saudi Arabian Gulf when I was a lot younger than I am now. And I find it staggering that we have all this ocean around us. We're way, way bigger than the Gulf of Saudi is. And they have desalination plants about every mile. So, it's... They never worry about water because they desalinate and they pipe it into trucks, and trucks come around and fill up your water tank. It's kind of amazing how they've got it all figured out. And yet you'd think, not that I'm a political animal, you'd think with all the ocean around us, we should figure out a different way, right? So
hey, good idea.
Yeah. Well, and then the other thing is there's a lot of the parts of the USA that get deluged in rain. Why can't we figure out how to trap it and re-divert it? It can't be beyond our technology to do that. It's I think there are other factors at play that stop us from doing the right thing right sometimes. But anyway, it's just my view.
Sure.
Anyway, well, cool. So I'm intrigued with your view of people and process and mission critical. So how do you, when you're addressing some of the things that you do in business, how do you keep that balance? Because I don't know about you, but that's always the key thing for me, is how do you keep it well balanced so that you don't become too mission centric and you overlook the people's needs, and you don't become too process hung up, and again, you overlook the people's needs. So I'm curious to learn some tips from you on how you keep all that in balance.
Sure. And that's really the reason I wrote the book. In fact, you mentioned earlier that oftentimes you and your guest have a lot in common.
Right.
And I've actually found that there are 3 P words, words that begin with P, that organizations and effective people, leaders in particular, need to be aware of, focus, and keep in balance. I tend to focus on people and performance, and I'm going to answer your question. But the third P that we need to be aware of and keep in balance as well is process, and that's your expertise. So it's fun that we're connected and talking in this way. But to answer your question, balancing people and performance involves being really clear about the mission, and then treating people in a way that allows them to connect with, be part of, and feel like they are valued as we strive to pursue that mission. And so oftentimes, organizations don't do a good job of either. And that's what I'm on a mission. My own mission is to help leaders get better and help teams get better in that regard.
Right. So do you think it starts with clarity or confidence about the clarity, or a little of each? Because, and the reason I ask that is I have a really, really unbelievable connection, Miss Connie Medina, who's actually in Los Alamitos there in California. And Connie's actually helped me recently with some issues around clarity and confidence. And I found that for me, they kind of work hand in hand. What have you found in terms of that mission critical clarity?
Yeah, it's essential. It's absolutely essential, because if people come to work and don't know what's most important and don't know where to invest their most valuable resource. You talked about water being a resource. Well, for us, really, the most valuable resource is time. And so when people are unclear on how to invest their time and on what they should be focused on, we're setting ourselves up for maybe not the disaster, but certainly mediocrity.
Right. Well, a lot of people don't really recognize that time is one of the precious resources that is non-recyclable. So, you know, you can recycle water, you can recycle metals, you can recycle garbage, you can recycle information. But the thing about time is once it's gone, and you can't ever get it back.
Absolutely. And there's so many distractions that are many of them are good things, other opportunities, the shiny object syndrome that we're all subject to some extent. The fact that we've got access to just about every bit of information in the world at our fingertips at all times, and it's just a click away to wander down a rabbit hole. Or maybe on the other side of things, people think they're doing the right thing and investing their time well and right, but it's not aligned with what's most important for the organization. And so what I think is really important, in addition to that clarity and this sense of confidence, to throw another C word, I guess I'm Mr. Alliteration this evening, but when we clearly understand what our mission is, and people can connect with that mission, and it becomes meaningful and important to them personally, commitment goes way up. And it becomes we don't need to hold people accountable when they are truly committed to the mission, because they'll hold themselves accountable. They'll take ownership.
Right. I find that amazing. And what I've noticed, the pandemic's brought about a lot of chaos and uncertainty and misery for many people, but for me, it's brought about an exposure to the fact that you don't need to over micromanage people because they will figure it out. And the other thing is I find that people will, resonate with the overall cause if you can break it down into simple steps. So obviously, I'm a process guy. And what I found is most things fit into 3 buckets. They either fit into a time bucket or a step bucket or a money bucket. And so, when you look at what people are doing, and if they're unclear about, whether it's mission critical or not, then you can start to subdivide things. And one little exercise I do for fun, and particularly around the time one, is when I work early on with a team, I will challenge them to all come up with, like, immediately, how do you say 1 minute per day each person? And, and they say, oh, well, what's the point in that? Well, say you're working with 7 or 8 people, that's 8 minutes a day, 40 minutes a week. Do the math, with 48 weeks, and then all of a sudden you start to get into whole people, like it saves the equivalent of 1, 2, 3, 10 people effort, and wasted effort. So
here's another piece to that question, Bruce, that might be useful. In addition to what can you do to save a minute each day, the second question is, and why would you want to save a minute each day? Because that why is the motivation that people have to actually get it done, to do what you've invited them to do. And when you can connect the why with the work, it all becomes meaningful and it makes sense.
Right. It's the why with the what. And then what I also find is I usually, and you've worked with groups before, a lot of people don't care about the time. It's all about the money. So I'll say, okay, well, if you don't want to work on the time thing, how about you figure out how to save $1 a day? And, and again, if each person does that. So that's one of the early exercises I find fun, because you can find out a lot about the individuals and the work team when you give them those 2 challenges. And you can very quickly see the ones that are more, people orientated versus data orientated. And the data orientation, people tend to lean towards the dollar saving stuff, and the more leadership people driven, they'll kind of lean towards the time piece. So it's a great way to figure out which side of the fence somebody's on real quick as well. So.
And there may be another side of the fence too for some people. Some people will want to save time, or maybe even save money, to make life better for people, to spread the work a little more evenly, or maybe we can pay people a little more if we save enough money. And all those things are, for them, it's all about helping the folks on the team more than saving the time or saving the dollar, or they do that in order to help the folks on the team.
Well, if you look at the hashtag right after my first name, that's why I came up with the simpler, faster, better, right? Because for me, it's, I'm a more mature career person. I've been there, done that on some of the things. What I'm striving for is better. And better to me is balance, me being able to, take my work with me or do my work wherever I want to do it, rather than having to go to a place of work. So, so there's lots of nuances all tied up in that. And that's why I find that if you get people to really understand what simpler, faster, better really is, it's eye-opening to them. It really does become mission life-changing if they take it on board. So,
and that word you just used, balance, is really maybe the word of the decade.
Right. Absolutely.
Because more and more people like you are looking for balance, and we may define balance a little differently. And that's part of my work, part of what I do as well, helping people recognize that they'll never get the results they're
Right.
trying to achieve unless they're able to tap into and bring out the best in the people around them. It's not just results, it's always results through relationships, results with, through, and for people
Yeah.
that really really matter and get things done.
Yeah, well, it's interesting early on in developing my methodology, which is simpler, faster, better. I used to actually have simpler, faster, best, but that kind of, it was somewhat confusing because best indicates maybe an end point. You know, once you've done your best, it's almost like a stopping point. So that's why I actually changed it up to better, because you can become better each and every day if you really want to, or you don't have to either. If that's not in your balance equation, then, you know, hang tough with what you're doing, and that's cool. But you
And
can
there
get better. Yeah.
and there are some people, and I've met many of them, who are energized by the idea of how do we optimize this?
Right.
How do we make those little tweaks that
Yeah.
make things just a little better, to use your term, or more efficient, or
Right.
reduce waste, or whatever the issue is? But they're charged up. In fact, you know, in the middle of the night, they wake up thinking about that better piece, and for them, that's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, every single time I've either done this, what I do with a work group or an individual or a combination of both, I always discover what I call, in every single project I've done, which I've done more than stopped counting at 140. So I've done a few, but I always find and look towards the person I call the bright eyes in the group. So, because it's amazing, there's always somebody that is, and they're usually a little bit more reserved in the early times of working with me, but eventually they start to warm up and they start to kind of get with the rhythm of things. And then it's almost like overnight they turn into this bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, super confident person that, you know, wants to take off, you know, Mach 2 with their hair on fire. And it's just so rewarding to see that, to see like how they evolve in the whole process of doing one or two projects. So amazing.
You know, I've been leading learning in the corporate world as well as academia for 20 years.
Right. Oh, wow.
And that dates me a little bit. But what I've discovered, to your point, is that you can't make snap judgments about the people who are there to learn.
Yeah.
I just got a note today, in fact, from someone who was in one of my sessions a couple of weeks ago, and she was pretty quiet. She didn't have a lot to say, and she was sort of stoic in her demeanor, but she was always there. And she sent me a note, a really nice note on LinkedIn that said, "Dr. Mike, I thought the class was great. You really helped me learn a lot. It was fantastic. And it was just this wonderful blessing that, you know, dropped on my lap first thing this morning, from someone I wasn't quite sure about how she felt about the training." So that's one thing I've learned over the years is, you know, don't judge people too quickly, because they very likely could be right there with you. They just don't respond in, you know, the way you would, or maybe somebody else does.
Right. Well, what a great, fantastic, or fabulous Friday. I always like to start each day with a positive word. So mine's usually Fabulous Friday for a Friday. So what a great wake up for that young lady to enlighten you and, you know, bring joy to your day. And yeah, and I would say, I mean, that's one of my biggest, fastest tips about don't, I mean, my grandma used to say, you know, don't judge a book by its cover, and that, You know, it's an old-fashioned saying, but that is so true. I've been proven wrong so many times when I've almost like written somebody off or thought, oh, well, you know, they'll never get it, or, you know, they're not really along, you know, they're not really on the program, as it were. And then I have been shocked so many times, like out of the blue, it's almost like all the things click for them, and then they either like do a leapfrog in front of everybody else, or they'll say something, or they'll do something. It's like, oh my word, they really do get it. And I would have written them off as being not on the program, you know, not with the program. And that's caught me out many times. So yeah, I try to be a little bit more patient and seeing what will come about from certain people, particularly the quieter people. Yeah, those are the ones that usually I underestimate, and they always over deliver, which I love. So
yeah, there's a couple of ideas that come to mind because I can relate to what you're saying, Bruce. One is this old saying that we tend to see people not as they are, but as we are. So we see them through our filters. And so a guy like me who's never met a microphone he didn't like, and he's always got something to say, and maybe you're kind of the same way because of the business we're in. We see people who are a bit quieter as well. Maybe they're disengaged. Maybe they don't get it. They're not committed to what we're trying to do here. But that's not the case at all for many people. They're just wired differently, and they're, you know, they act a little differently than I would act in that situation. Another thing I've recognized as being an important lesson I've got to keep in mind is that for some reason, we as humans are prone to commit what's called, what psychologists call the fundamental attribution error, which is this idea that we have this big bias in favor of us. We're the good guy, and those people over there, they're the bad guys. Sometimes we say we tend to judge ourselves by our good intentions, and we judge those people by their bad behavior and their and the underlying character flaws that obviously fuel that bad behavior, when in fact they may not be bad folks at all. And the little game I like to play with some of my classes is I ask people to think about, if you don't believe in the fundamental attribution error, think about the last time you got cut off in traffic. How did you respond? I mean, you probably shook your fist, or, you know, some other part of your hand at the person. You said bad words, maybe. You know, you called them an idiot and ask them where they got their driver's license. But then flip it and think about how you responded the last time you accidentally cut someone off in traffic. You probably said, sorry, I'm a really good driver. And why were you in my blind spot, you idiot? You know, I can't see you there. So one of the things that I'm keenly aware of, and becoming more keenly aware of all the time, is that I need to respect and value people and not make quick judgments.
Well, where I've got caught out many times is, you know, I don't always relate to the fact that people process information very differently than me. And I tend to be, well, it depends which subject I'm in, but I tend to be relatively quick study. If I'm a kinesthetic visual learner, and I know that. So if I can do both modes, like visual learning and kinesthetic at the same time doing stuff, I'm a pretty quick study. However, if you flip that on me and say, here, Bruce, you have to find out everything from reading this book, and there's no visual aids, and there's nobody to ask questions. I mean, I am dumber than dumb. I mean, I just can't. And I'm often reminded of that when I have to build this furniture. You know, I just recently moved and had to do some of the, you know, flat pack furniture building again, you know, and it's like, man, it's like I get angry with myself because hey, I know I'm smarter than this. I know I can do this, but I'm looking at this diagram and these less than ideal instructions, and there's no video that I can go watch. There's nobody to say, hey, show me how this goes together. And well, the times I've built stuff upside down, inside out, half the right way, half the wrong way, it just drives me nuts. So I know that about myself, but I don't give that opportunity to other people, and I should.
Yeah, I defer to my wife on all those IKEA furniture building adventures. She's much better than I am on those things. Maybe this is a quick tip for people. What's coming through to me in our conversation is that people are all different. We're wired differently, created differently, and that doesn't make anyone better or lesser than another person, but it's incumbent upon us, especially if we're a leader, to get to know the people on our team. So
Mike, I've lost your.
I think I'm back. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. Thank you.
Magically, the mute button just pops on occasionally. I've discovered that's the problem.
Cool. You have a mind of its own microphone. You should call it a name. Michael, the mind of its own, Mike, or something.
Perhaps, yeah. So my point, just to wrap that idea, that point up, is as leaders, as members of teams, let's not write off anyone until we've really invested in understanding who they are. Because when we understand who they are, we position ourselves to connect with them, express value in who they are, show appreciation for who they are, and that creates a sense of dignity within the team. And that's what we're all striving for. We will never get better unless we treat people well.
Right. Well, the other thing I've learned is to give people the opportunity to show their stuff through different modalities. So, I think we're all uniquely different in that way, and the percentage of how we like to either communicate or express ourselves or demonstrate things. And so being more open to the amount of different modalities you give people, and or the type of expressive communication tools you give people, that can be a game changer. So
yeah, I completely agree with that. And I would add that giving people, you use the term giving people an opportunity to express themselves in different ways. It might be as simple as giving people a voice, giving them the opportunity to express themselves in meetings. Something that was really profound for me that I captured in the book. I was looking at, the characteristics of high performing teams in part of the book, and Google, with all their incredible resources and insights and wisdom and all the things that they have access to, they did this really large, incredible high power study a few years ago. You've probably heard of it, called Project Aristotle, and it uncovered the study was designed to identify the characteristics of high performing teams, and then maybe identify some ways that lesser performing teams were kind of missing it. And the big breakthrough idea for me as I looked at their findings was that the teams that perform best tended to have people that all talked about the same amount of time, versus the teams where a few people, whether it's the manager, whether it's the dominant personality person who consumed most of the airtime in team meetings and conversations, those teams perform much less well than the teams where everyone spoke about the same amount of time. And so that was a big light bulb moment for me.
Right.
There's insight, there's wisdom, there's good stuff residing in each person on the team. We just might have to invite that out, give the space to them to share what they know, and we might be surprised at where incredible wisdom comes from in our next team meeting if we do that.
Right. Well, actually, we've kind of come full circle, because you just described allowing balance amongst the team members and giving people opportunity to feel comfortable, voicing their way of communicating, and it might be a little different than we're used to. So what a great overall summary of, I love working with high potential leaders, and particularly high potential leaders and teams. That's my bag. Those are the people that fire me up and get me all, juiced up, and I love to see them be successful. So yeah, within the people I prefer to work with, those are the high potential leaders, and I have a whole genre around, well, what are the characteristics of those? Because I've actually been collecting those as, I work with high potential people or high potential teams and leaders. So kind of done my own little, not formal research study, but I found it's pretty spot on. And it's really interesting, little sidebar, when I meet a high pot, as I call them, and they don't realize they're a high pot, I'll send them my 2-pager of characteristics and say, hey, what do you think of this? And they'll go, oh my God, that's me. And I'll say, yeah, it is. There's a lot of you in here.
And what's energizing for guys like us, Bruce, when we get to work with those high potential leaders, especially the younger ones,
if
we can change the trajectory of not only their career, but all the people they're going to impact over the course of their career. If we can make them just a little better leader when they're 28 or 30 or 32, they're going to affect hundreds of people over the next 30 years. And I just love the thought of that, because I think, at least I'll speak for myself here, I've had my fair share of really bad leaders and my share of really good leaders. And as a result of that, I'm on a mission to move more people in the good and great leader column. And that's my mission at this point in life.
Right. I'm similar. It's about, don't waste the 4+ decades of stuff between my ears here, which I call my legacy. And it's not meant to be boastful, but it's like, how can I, before I'm not around or my cognition's not available to pass on to other people, how do I pass that on? How do I try and help people not do some of the things that I made serious mistakes doing in my past? Because I didn't know any different. I've been a leader with different styles. I've been a leader in different countries. I've been a leader in 27 different industries in my career so far. And you learn something about each of those experiences. And so, and I've been a bad player, I admit it. I've been a terrible bad player at times, and, and it's like, oh, come on, Bruce, you know better than that. So you've lost the sound again. Oh, almost. There we go. Almost.
Hello.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
All right. So I think the electronics is trying to tell us something, Dr. Mike. I think it's probably time to do yourself a plug. Yeah, I think so. Otherwise, we're going to be like trying to do this mime act here, which is not going to be fun.
So as we wrap up, Bruce, can I tell people about my book and my work?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's what I mean. Yeah, go for it. And then I'll do an outtake video to do my plug. So
I wrote this book.
Oops, lost you again.
First, people always. It's a easy read, a lot of stories, historical stories, some amazing people I'll introduce you to in the book.
Awesome.
But really grounded in scholarly research. I'm a university professor, so I spend part of my time with, in the academic world, but I always try to keep a foot in the real world. And so there's some really deep, profound scholarship that I try to introduce to folks in a really simple, memorable, fun way. Um,
Mhm.
and that's what the book is all about. Maybe what I'm most proud of in the book is the fact that at the end of every chapter, there's a series of reflection questions, kind of like a
Awesome.
coaching conversation. So read a chapter and then sit with it, answer the questions, maybe sit with it for a week. And then I suggest some action items that you can do to develop a skill, build a better relationship with someone. So that's the format of the book. I also do training. I'm a speaker. People can reach me at my email that's on the screen there, Mike at drmikepatterson.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, The Real Dr. Mike Patterson. If any of your viewers would like to continue this conversation, I'd be thrilled to hear from them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll post it in my headline and back to the individual posts that we did. So people can ask questions afterwards, and it's easy to go back and answer those. And so where do people get the book?
Anywhere books are sold digitally. So
Oh, it's digital. Okay, cool.
Amazon is the main place here.
Kindle Direct Publishing as well.
Yeah, well, it's available on Kindle, paperback, audiobook, Barnes and Noble, Apple Books. It's really everywhere except maybe you won't find it in your local bookstore. But from what I hear, relatively few people buy books there anymore anyway.
Right. Okay. Well, awesome. So thanks so much. And actually want to try something that I learned new. So I'm going to do a little outtake of my shameless plug. So here we go. And then we'll just say bye at the end. So thanks everyone for listening in. There's often people listening in that don't comment. So thank you for that. And if you see this as a replay and want to reach out for more information from either of us, then just direct message us or find us on our respective websites, and that will come up here.
So, what if your processes do not work well? Did you know you can save or eliminate massive amounts of wasted steps, time, money, or other resources? Bruce can show or teach you how. Take the next step. Visit his website at processcleanup.com and book a casual yet confidential call with Bruce. It just might change your world forever.
All right. How about that?
It was great. I want to thank you, Bruce, for hosting me. It was a really pleasant conversation. I appreciate that. And I wish everyone a great weekend and happy Thanksgiving a couple of weeks early if you're in the U.S.
Sure. Absolutely. All right. So just hang on for a minute or so, Dr. Mike, and I'll finish up here. Thanks, everyone. Take care.